"Your son is such an idiot. He actually believes I love him." Those words sliced through me like a rusted blade that Sunday afternoon, and everything I thought I knew about my son's future shattered in an instant. Let me take you back to that day. It was the second Sunday of September, and the Texas sun was painting the sky in shades of orange and gold as it began its slow descent behind the oak trees that lined my property. I had spent 32 years building Henderson Ranch, from nothing more than 100 acres of dry land and a dream into one of the most successful cattle operations in hill country. And that evening, I was about to celebrate what I believed would be the next chapter of our family's legacy. My son, my only child, was getting engaged. The backyard had been transformed into something out of a magazine. White tents with string lights, tables covered in crisp linens, and flowers everywhere. My late wife would have loved it. She had always dreamed of seeing our boy find happiness, and as I stood on the back porch watching the guests arrive, I felt her presence beside me. My son walked across the lawn with his arm around his fiancée. He was 31 years old, tall and strong like his grandfather, with his mother's kind eyes. He had come back to the ranch 3 years ago after working in Houston, saying he wanted to learn the business properly. I had never been prouder. His fiancée was a woman named Kristen. She was 27, beautiful in that polished way that city women often are, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that seemed to light up every room she entered. She had met my son at some charity event in Austin 8 months ago, and within weeks, he was completely devoted to her. I had my reservations from the start. Something about her felt rehearsed, like she was always performing rather than simply being. But my son was happy, genuinely happy, for the first time since his mother passed. So I kept my concerns to myself and welcomed her into our family. The guests numbered about 60. Family, friends, neighbors who had known my son since he was a boy learning to ride his first horse. They mingled and laughed while a local band played country music near the old barn. I was making my way through the crowd, shaking hands and accepting congratulations, when I realized I needed to find my son. I had a gift for him, his grandfather's pocket watch, the one that had been passed down through 4 generations of Henderson men. I wanted to give it to him privately before I made the announcement at dinner. I checked the main tent. Not there. The barn where we had set up the bar. Not there either. One of the ranch hands mentioned he had seen my son heading toward the equipment shed with Kristen about 10 minutes ago. The equipment shed sat about 200 yards from the main celebration, close to the horse stables. As I approached, I could hear voices. I was about to call out when something in the tone made me stop. It was Kristen's voice, but it sounded different, harder, colder. "Your son is such an idiot. He actually believes I love him." I froze. My hand was on the corner of the wooden shed, and I pressed myself against the wall, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. A woman laughed. It was not Kristen's usual melodic laugh. This one was sharp and cruel. "I mean, look at this place," Kristen continued. 3,000 acres, profitable cattle operation, oil rights that his stupid father does not even know how to properly leverage. Once we are married, I give it 6 months before I convince him to put my name on everything. Then another year before the divorce. I will walk away with half of this empire, maybe more, if I play it right. "And what about the old man?" Another woman's voice. I did not recognize it. "He is already 63. He has had 1 heart attack. How much longer can he really last? Besides, my sweet fiancé is an only child. Everything flows to him, which means everything flows to me." The blood drained from my face. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I thought I might be having another heart attack right there. "But what if the father gets suspicious?" the other woman asked. "Please." Kristen's voice dripped with contempt. "He is so desperate for his son to be happy, he would believe anything. And my future husband is so blinded by love, or what he thinks is love, that he defends me against anyone who questions our relationship. His college friend tried to warn him last month. Guess who does not get invited to the wedding anymore?" They both laughed. I stood there, unable to move, unable to breathe. The woman my son loved, the woman he wanted to spend his life with, was nothing but a con artist, a predator in an expensive dress. "Come on," Kristen said. "We should get back before someone notices we are gone. Hand me my phone. I need to text my fiancé and tell him I was just freshening up." I heard footsteps moving toward the other side of the shed. I quickly stepped back behind a stack of hay bales, my mind racing. What do I do? How do I tell my son that the woman he loves is planning to destroy him? I watched them emerge from the shed. Kristen smoothed her dress and put on that perfect smile, like she was slipping on a mask. The other woman was someone I had never seen before. Dark hair, sharp features, wearing a server's uniform from the catering company. They separated, Kristen heading back toward the party, while the other woman went toward the catering van parked near the service entrance. I leaned against the hay bales, my legs weak. 32 years of building something meaningful, and this woman planned to tear it all apart. But worse than that, far worse, was what she would do to my son. He loved her completely. This would destroy him. But I could not let him marry her. I could not let him walk into this trap with his eyes closed. I straightened my shoulders, took a deep breath, and walked back toward the party. The string lights seemed dimmer now, the music hollow. Every laugh felt false, every smile suspicious. I found my son near the dessert table, talking with his cousin about cattle futures. He looked up when he saw me, and grinned that boyish grin that reminded me so much of his mother. "Dad, there you are. I was looking for you. Kristen wants to do the toast in about 20 minutes. Are you ready with your speech?" I looked at him, really looked at him. This was my boy, the child I had held moments after he was born, promising his mother I would always protect him. The teenager who had worked beside me through scorching summers and freezing winters. The man who had held my hand in the hospital after my heart attack and told me he was not ready to lose me yet. "Son," I said quietly, "I need to speak with you, privately. Now." His smile faltered. "Is everything okay? Is it your heart?" "No, it is not my heart. Please, it is important." He excused himself from his cousin and followed me toward the old oak tree at the edge of the property. It was where his mother and I had shared our first kiss, where we had told him she was sick, where we had scattered her ashes. It was our family's place for truth. "Dad, you are scaring me," he said when we were finally alone. "What is going on?" I put my hands on his shoulders. "What I am about to tell you is going to hurt, and I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" "Of course I trust you. What is it?" I told him everything, every word I had overheard, the oil rights, the divorce plan, the comment about my heart attack. I watched his face as I spoke, watched the confusion turn to disbelief, turn to something that looked like anger. But the anger was not directed at Kristen. "Dad." He stepped back, pulling away from my hands. "What the hell are you talking about?" I heard her, son, behind the equipment shed. She was talking to some woman from the catering company. She said you were an idiot, that she was only after the ranch and the money. That is insane. His voice was rising now. Kristen loves me. She does not care about the money. She has her own career, her own savings. She is a marketing executive, for God's sake. I know what I heard. Do you? Because this sounds like something out of a bad movie, Dad. You have never liked her. From the very beginning, you have been looking for reasons to disapprove. That is not true. It is absolutely true. You think I do not notice the looks you give her, the way you change the subject whenever I talk about our future together? Mom would have loved her. Mom would have welcomed her with open arms. That one hurt. He knew it would. Do not bring your mother into this, I said, my voice harder now. This is not about whether I like Kristen. This is about what I heard with my own ears. Then you heard wrong, or you misunderstood, or maybe you are so desperate to keep me here on this ranch, under your control, that you are inventing reasons to sabotage my relationship. Son, listen to me. No, Dad, you listen. He was shaking now, his fists clenched at his sides. I am marrying Kristen. That is happening whether you approve or not. And if you try to interfere, if you try to turn people against her with these ridiculous accusations, then maybe we need to reconsider how involved you are going to be in our lives going forward. The words hit me like a physical blow. My own son, threatening to cut me out of his life over a woman who was planning to rob him blind. Please, I said, and I heard the desperation in my own voice. Just ask her. Confront her. See how she reacts. I am not going to insult my fiancée based on some fantasy you concocted, because you cannot accept that I am growing up and moving on." He turned and walked away, back toward the party, back toward Kristen, who was waving at him from the main tent with that perfect, poisonous smile. I stood alone under the oak tree as the sun finished setting and the first stars appeared. My son thought I was a bitter old man who could not let go, and the woman who was going to destroy him had won before the battle even started. But I was not done. Not by a long shot. The engagement party continued without me. I retreated to my study in the main house and poured myself a whiskey, something my doctor had forbidden since the heart attack. I did not care. I sat in the leather chair that had belonged to my father and thought. Kristen had mentioned a woman from the catering company, someone she trusted enough to share her real plans with. That meant this was not a solo operation. There was a network, maybe a whole team of people who did this professionally. I opened my laptop and searched for the catering company we had hired. Elegant Affairs, based out of Austin. Good reviews, reasonable prices, nothing suspicious. But one of their servers was in on Kristen's scheme. I needed more information. I needed proof, and I knew exactly who to call. My old friend Marcus was a retired FBI agent who had helped me once before, years ago, when a business partner tried to embezzle from the ranch. He was 70 now, living in San Antonio, but his mind was still sharp as a tack. I called him the next morning. "Richard Henderson," he said when he answered. "It has been too long. How is that stubborn heart of yours?" "Still beating, though it is working overtime lately." "Marcus, I need a favor. A big one." I told him everything. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. "This sounds professional," Marcus finally said. "Marriage fraud, inheritance targeting. It is more common than people think. Usually targets widowers or divorced men with significant assets. Your son fits the profile. Can you look into her? Her background? Her history? I can do better than that. I know a private investigator in Austin, woman named Janet Chen. She specializes in exactly this kind of case. I will give her a call, get things started. How long will it take? Depends on how deep the deception goes. Could be days, could be weeks. In the meantime, you need to keep your head down and your mouth shut. If Kristen suspects you are investigating her, she will cover her tracks. Or worse, she will accelerate her timeline. I understand. And Richard, be careful. People who do this for a living do not like being exposed. They can be dangerous. I hung up and stared out the window at the land I had worked my entire life to build. My son would not speak to me. He and Kristen had left the night before without saying goodbye, returning to their apartment in Austin. For the first time in 32 years, my home felt empty. The days that followed were agony. I went through the motions of running the ranch, giving orders I barely remembered, signing documents I hardly read. The workers noticed something was wrong, but they knew better than to ask. Janet Chen called me 4 days later. "Mr. Henderson, I have preliminary findings. Are you sitting down?" I sat. Kristen Miller is not her real name. Her legal name is Catherine Morse. She is 34, not 27. She has been married twice before, both times to wealthy men, significantly older than herself. The first marriage ended in divorce, after 18 months. She walked away with $1.8 million. The second husband died of a heart attack 6 months into the marriage. She inherited his entire estate, roughly $3 million. I felt sick. A heart attack? The death was ruled natural causes. But there are questions. The husband's family contested the will, claimed she had isolated him from his support system, and pressured him into changing his beneficiary designations. The case was settled out of court. She killed him. I cannot prove that. Not yet. But there is more. The woman you saw her talking to at the party, the one in the catering uniform. Her name is Diane Morse, Catherine's sister. They work as a team. Diane infiltrates service staff at events to gather intelligence on potential targets. She probably scouted your son months before Catherine ever met him. I stood up, pacing the room. How do I stop her? You need evidence that will hold up in court. Or at least evidence compelling enough that your son cannot deny it. I am working on getting documentation of her previous marriages, financial records, anything that shows a pattern. But you also need to consider that your son may not believe it even when confronted with proof. He has to believe it. He is not a stupid man. Love makes smart people do stupid things, Mr. Henderson. I have seen it 100 times. The question is whether he loves her enough to ignore the truth. 2 weeks passed. Janet continued her investigation while I tried to repair my relationship with my son. I called him every day. Most calls went to voicemail. The few times he answered, our conversations were short and strained. "Just give her a chance, Dad," he said during one call. "That is all I am asking." "I am trying, son. I really am." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The wedding was scheduled for December 15th, 3 months away. Kristen had insisted on a winter wedding. Something about the romantic atmosphere. I suspected she wanted to get the marriage completed before the new tax year, giving her a better position for the inevitable divorce proceedings. Marcus called me in late October with news. Janet found something big. Catherine Morse has a sealed juvenile record that was supposed to be expunged. She pulled some strings with an old contact. At 16, Catherine was arrested for elder fraud. She befriended an elderly widow, convinced the woman to add her to the bank accounts, then drained them. Charges were reduced because of her age, but the pattern was established early. That is it, then. That is the proof we need. There is more. Catherine has significant debt, over $200,000, mostly from a failed real estate scheme. She is desperate. This marriage is not just opportunity for her, it is survival. That makes her more dangerous, but also more likely to make mistakes. What do we do? Janet has a plan, but you are not going to like it. The plan was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. We would create a situation where Kristen would reveal her true intentions on camera, in front of witnesses who could not be dismissed. It required careful timing, absolute secrecy, and my willingness to risk my relationship with my son forever. I agreed without hesitation. November arrived, cold and gray. The wedding preparations were in full swing. Kristen called me, her voice sweet and warm, inviting me to a dinner at an upscale restaurant in Austin. "Just the 3 of us," she said. A chance to clear the air before the big day. I accepted, knowing it was a performance on both sides. The restaurant was elegant, quiet, the kind of place where deals were made and secrets were kept. My son was already there when I arrived, sitting beside Kristen at a corner table. He stood when he saw me, and I caught a flicker of hope in his eyes. "Dad, I am glad you came. I would not miss it." Kristen rose and kissed my cheek, her perfume thick and cloying. "Richard, thank you so much for agreeing to this. I know things have been tense, but I truly believe we can move past it. We are going to be family, after all." We sat and ordered drinks. The conversation was light at first, carefully neutral. Kristen talked about wedding details, seating arrangements, floral selections. My son watched her with adoration that made my stomach turn. Then Kristen excused herself to use the restroom, and I was alone with my son for the first time in weeks. "She is trying, Dad," he said quietly. "Can you at least acknowledge that? I see that she is making an effort. Then meet her halfway, please, for me." I looked at my boy, this man I had raised and loved and worried over for 31 years. He had no idea what was coming. Part of me wanted to warn him, to tell him everything Janet had found, to spare him the humiliation of public exposure. But he would not believe me. He had made that clear. The only way he would accept the truth was if he saw it with his own eyes. "I will try," I said. "I promise." Kristen returned, and dinner continued. By the time dessert arrived, my son was smiling again, and Kristen had her hand on my arm like we were old friends. It was a masterful performance. If I had not heard her behind that shed, I might have believed it myself. The trap was set for December 1st, 2 weeks before the wedding. Janet had discovered that Kristen was planning a secret meeting with her sister to finalize their strategy for the post-wedding asset transfer. The meeting was scheduled at a coffee shop in a suburb of Austin, a quiet place where they thought no one would notice them. We would notice them. Marcus arranged for a surveillance team, former bureau colleagues who owed him favors. They would record everything, audio, video, every word that passed between the two sisters. I was not supposed to be there. Janet had made that clear. My presence could compromise the operation, tip them off that they were being watched. But I could not stay away. I parked 2 blocks from the coffee shop and watched the door. They arrived separately. Diane first, in casual clothes that made her look like any other Austin professional grabbing a morning coffee. Catherine 10 minutes later, sunglasses on despite the overcast sky. They sat at a table near the back. I could not see them through the window, but I knew the surveillance team was capturing everything. 45 minutes later, they left. Catherine got into her car and drove toward the city. Diane headed in the opposite direction. My phone buzzed. A text from Janet. Got it. Everything. Call me tonight. That night, I sat in my study and listened to the recording. Janet played it over speakerphone while Marcus and I sat in silence. Catherine's voice, clear and cold. Once we are married, I need you to start laying groundwork with the accounting firm. The old man uses Henderson Financial Services for everything. Find out who handles the ranch accounts. Diane, what about the prenup? There is no prenup. I convinced him it was unromantic, a sign of distrust. His father tried to push for one, but my darling fiancé shut that down. He actually defended me, said if I was good enough to marry, I was good enough to trust. They both laughed. And the timeline? Diane asked. 18 months, maybe 2 years. Long enough to establish myself as a committed wife, short enough to get out before I lose my mind. The ranch alone is worth 12 to 15 million. With the oil rights and the investment accounts, I am looking at close to 20 million in the divorce settlement. And the old man? He is not long for this world. One more heart attack should do it. And if nature does not cooperate, well, there are ways to encourage these things. I stopped the recording. My hands were shaking. That is enough, I said. That is more than enough. Janet's voice came through the phone. We have her on conspiracy to commit fraud, possibly conspiracy to commit murder given the reference to encouraging a heart attack. The question is how you want to proceed. We can go to the police, but that could take months. Or we can confront her directly, force her to walk away before any charges are filed. Marcus spoke for the first time. If she walks away, she will just find another target, another family to destroy. I know, I said. That is why she needs to face consequences. Real consequences. But I need my son to hear this first. He needs to understand what she is before the police get involved. He might not believe it even now. Then I will make him believe it. 2 days later, I invited my son to the ranch. I told him I had something important to discuss about the wedding, something I could not say over the phone. He agreed reluctantly, arriving on a Thursday evening with suspicion written all over his face. What is this about, Dad? More warnings about Kristen? Just come inside, please. He followed me to the study, where Marcus and Janet were waiting. My son stopped in the doorway, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. What the hell is this? Who are these people? Sit down, son. No. Tell me what is going on. These are my friends. Marcus, you remember from when you were a boy. And this is Janet Chen. She is a private investigator. They have been looking into Kristen's background. His face went red. You hired someone to spy on my fiancé? I did. And I would do it again, because what they found might have saved your life. Janet stepped forward. Mr. Henderson, I understand this is difficult, but please, just listen to the recording. Then you can decide what to do. She pressed play. I watched my son's face as his fiancé's voice filled the room. I watched the color drain from his cheeks. I watched his hands clench and unclench. I watched something break behind his eyes. When it was over, he sat in absolute silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, a horse whinnied in the stables. This is fake, he finally said, but his voice had no conviction. This has to be fake. It is not fake, Janet said gently. I can show you the raw footage if you need to see it. I can show you her arrest record, her marriage certificates, the death certificate of her second husband. It is all documented. Her second husband, yes. He died of a heart attack 6 months after they married. She inherited everything. My son put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook, but no sound came out. I crossed the room and knelt beside him, putting my hand on his back. "I am sorry, son. I am so sorry. I loved her." His voice was muffled, broken. "I really loved her. I know you did. She was going to kill you. She was talking about killing you like it was nothing. She was talking about a lot of things, but she is not going to do any of them. We are going to stop her." He looked up at me, his eyes red and wet. "How?" I told him the plan. The wedding was still scheduled for December 15th. We would let Kristen believe everything was proceeding normally. On the morning of the wedding, before the ceremony, we would confront her with the evidence in front of witnesses. She would have two choices: walk away quietly and never contact our family again, or face criminal charges that would likely result in significant prison time. "She will never agree to that," my son said. "She is too proud, too confident. She is also practical. Prison does not serve her interests. A clean break does. And if she refuses, then the police are waiting outside to arrest her on conspiracy charges. Either way, she is done." My son was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay. What do you need me to do?" The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. My son had to pretend nothing had changed. He had to look Kristen in the eyes, kiss her, tell her he loved her, all while knowing she was planning to steal his inheritance and possibly murder his father. He did it. I do not know how, but he did it. Kristen noticed nothing. She was too focused on the wedding, on the prize waiting at the end of the aisle. She called me 3 days before the ceremony to discuss the rehearsal dinner, and her voice was warm and friendly and completely oblivious. "Richard, I just wanted to say how much it means to me that you have come around. Your son told me you two are in a much better place now. That is all I ever wanted, really, for this family to be whole." "I appreciate you saying that, Kristen." "Catherine," I thought. "Your name is Catherine, and you are a predator, and in 3 days your hunt ends." December 15th arrived gray and cold. The wedding was scheduled for 4 in the afternoon at a venue outside Austin, a converted barn that Kristen had selected for its rustic charm. Guests began arriving around 3. I stood near the entrance, greeting people I had known for decades, smiling and shaking hands while my heart pounded against my ribs. At 3:30, Janet signaled me from across the room. Kristen had arrived and was in the bridal suite with her sister. It was time. I walked to the bridal suite with my son beside me. Marcus and 2 police officers followed at a distance, staying out of sight until they were needed. My son knocked on the door. "Kristen, it is me. Can I come in?" "Baby, you cannot see me before the ceremony. It is bad luck." "I know, but there is something important, something that cannot wait." A pause. Then the door opened, and Kristen appeared in her wedding dress, white lace and silk, looking like an angel. Her sister stood behind her, already sensing something was wrong. "What is it?" Kristen asked, her smile faltering when she saw my face. My son stepped aside, and I moved forward. "Catherine Morse," I said, using her real name for the first time. "We need to talk." Her mask slipped, just for a second, just long enough for me to see the predator beneath the surface. Then she recovered, laughing nervously. "Catherine, baby, I think your father is confused." "I am not confused," I said. "I know exactly who you are. I know about your previous marriages. I know about Thomas Wellington, your second husband who died so conveniently. I know about the $200,000 in debt and the real estate scheme that failed. And I know what you said to your sister at that coffee shop 3 weeks ago." Diane grabbed Kristen's arm. "We need to go. Now." "Go where?" My son's voice was steady, but I could hear the pain underneath. "There is nowhere to go. The police are outside. Your plan is over." Kristen's eyes darted between us, calculating, searching for an angle. Then she focused on my son, and her expression shifted to pleading. "Baby, please. Whatever they told you, it is not true. They are trying to manipulate you, to turn you against me. I love you. I have always loved you." "Stop." His voice broke, but he held firm. "Just stop. I heard the recording. I heard you talking about the ranch, the money, about how I was an idiot who believed you loved me. I heard you talk about my father dying, about helping him along if he did not die fast enough." Tears streamed down Kristen's face. Real tears, or performance tears, I could not tell. Maybe she could not tell either anymore. That was not real. I was just venting. Sometimes I say things I do not mean. You know how stress gets to me. You said I was an idiot. I was frustrated. Wedding planning is so overwhelming, and your father has been so difficult from the start. I just needed to blow off steam. It did not mean anything. You said you would walk away with half my inheritance. That was just fantasy talk. Every couple thinks about money sometimes. It does not mean I was planning to actually do anything. My son shook his head slowly. You are still lying. Even now, with everything exposed, you cannot stop lying. Marcus stepped forward with the two officers. Catherine Morse, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Diane tried to run, but one of the officers caught her before she made it 3 steps. The guests in the main venue had started to notice something was wrong. Murmurs spread through the crowd as the officers led the 2 women out in handcuffs. Kristen screamed the whole way, alternating between curses and pleas, her wedding dress dragging through the dirt. My son stood frozen in the doorway of the bridal suite, staring at the empty room where his future was supposed to begin. I put my hand on his shoulder. Come on, son. Let us go home. The trial took place the following spring. Catherine Morse was charged with conspiracy to commit fraud and extortion. Her sister was charged as an accomplice. The evidence was overwhelming. Recordings, financial documents, testimony from Janet and Marcus, even statements from Thomas Wellington's family, who had long suspected foul play in his death. The prosecution reopened the investigation into Thomas's death. 3 months later, Catherine was additionally charged with second-degree murder after new evidence revealed she had been systematically increasing his heart medication without his knowledge. She was sentenced to 22 years in federal prison. Her sister received 8 years. My son did not attend the sentencing. He could not bear to see her again. But I went. I sat in the front row and watched as the woman who had planned to destroy my family was led away in chains. Afterward, I drove home to the ranch. It was late May, and the Texas wildflowers were blooming across the hills, purple and yellow and orange against the green grass. My son was waiting on the porch when I arrived. "How was it?" he asked. "It is over. She is going away for a long time." He nodded slowly. We sat together on the porch as the sun set, watching the cattle graze in the distance. "I should have believed you," he said finally. "That first night, at the engagement party, when you told me what you heard, I should have trusted you. You were in love. Love makes us blind to things we do not want to see. You never gave up on me. Even when I said terrible things to you, threatened to cut you out of my life, you kept fighting. That is what fathers do. We fight for our children, even when they do not want us to, especially when they do not want us to." He reached over and took my hand, something he had not done since he was a little boy. "Thank you, Dad." We sat like that for a long time, father and son, watching the stars come out over the land that 4 generations of Henderson men had worked and loved. The land that would pass to my son, and someday to his children, untouched by the woman who had tried to steal it. The crickets began their evening song. In the stables, the horses settled in for the night. And in that moment, surrounded by everything I had built and everyone I loved, I understood that all the pain and fear and sleepless nights had been worth it. Because protecting your child is not just something you do, it is something you are. It is the very core of who you become the moment you hold them for the first time and make that silent promise. I will keep you safe. No matter what it takes, no matter what it costs. I kept that promise, and I would make it again, 1,000 times over, without hesitation. That is what a father's love means. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Whispered Vengeance and leave a comment sharing where you are listening from. And remember, like and share so more people can hear stories of justice served.